Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I am your host, Scott Ramp. I'm here to usher you in through the weekend. It is April 16th, but it is April 15th when I recorded this. So I wanted to kind of refute something that I said last week about the Amazon union passing last week, which didn't happen. It overwhelmingly the workers voted against unionizing in Bessemer, Alabama. So this isn't the end. Many formations of unions usually fail on many different tries, but there's always a chance for more opportunities in the future. But yeah, it was basically kind of highlighted. It was kind of like a huge thing that's happening in there as well. So far, attempts to unionize are far and few in between in the last 40 years or so as a result of trickle-down economics. You know, you expect that without regulations to some corporations, you think that, you know, their wealth that they gain is going to be distributed to their employees. Think again. And then, of course, you got the world economy, where Bill Clinton wanted people to connect to the world and have U.S. as a major economic growth, so which kind of was the source of a lot of outsourcing for a lot of companies. So companies that usually manufactured a lot of stuff, so like they can outsource for cheap labor, and that's what a lot of people did starting in the 90s moving forward. Of course, there was some other ones that started doing it earlier, but the trend really started picking up in the 90s. So far, the biggest story out of government is the move towards the infrastructure package, which may include the PRO Act thing. So like I said, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks, and the PRO Act is pro-union and everything like that. So far, this infrastructure package is looking for to help with transportation, which will cover about $85 billion, and a lot of transportation, buses, trains, and public transportation are looking just for $100 billion to repair in just repairs across the nation. So a drop in the pan compared to the needs, not only of the public transit, but the overall roads, bridges, and the possibility of expanding the border wall, which also seems to be continuing their construction. That's kind of the thing is we're not talking about the issues with our southern neighbors because U.S. is in need of repairs. The main push for is roads, clean energy, fiber for internet. That seems to be a big push for rural areas that are in need for many of these things that we enjoy in our larger cities. I mean, Missoula is not the largest city, but we have a lot of amenities here, but are too much for smaller towns with low tax bases and lower interest in applying for grants that would help some areas. So there are smaller towns, but there's not enough effort to push forward for a lot of those build grants. Better utilizing infrastructure development. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, and that's a federal grant that a lot of communities use for a lot of the roads adjacent to highways and whatnot. So the grant process can be very unsexy because it does require a full-blown plan for areas that would provide money to certain areas with higher construction costs, labor, materials, and whatnot. Jumping on this while interest rates are at an all-time low would be beneficial for the next 8 years in terms of this infrastructure bill. Originally, the major dent that people were saying is that would have been done was would have been a $10 trillion, which would have a major impact. The whole idea of having a New Deal. But as time, they began cutting. The original proposal at the very beginning was $4 trillion, but they halved it in hopes of getting bipartisan support by the GOP. But judging by how the American Rescue Plan passed over a month ago, we can expect a lot of the same results with partisan voting. Missoula had a State of Missoula address which talked about the pandemic and all that money coming into our community through the American Rescue Plan. So Missoula is actually doing really well in terms of money coming into the city of Missoula. There's $35 million in both the city and county of Missoula from the latest stimulus plan, with ideas of holding property taxes back and still providing new mental health mobile crisis center. The city launched last year in the wake of the George Floyd killings and overuse of force from the police when handling mental health issues. I'm not saying that the police have escalated situations in town, but the crisis unit adds the support for members of the community that need help that police cannot provide, and even more so with follow-up after the fact with the crisis unit. So far, the use of the money from the relief package went into programs like BASE, which provided cheap and waived fees for basic childcare, and BASE is out of the Parks and Rec department. That's just one of the things that came up at the top of my head. The city has also created the Affordable Housing Trust, and on Wednesday they had more hearings to get people more involved with the Housing Trust, looking for diversity of people, renters, homeowners, just different types of economic status to be part of this housing trust to keep people in their homes. And part of this trust is just the sustainability. City and county has also created the Food Policy Advisory Board, which in May 2020 wanted to work with the food bank and local entities to provide safe food for the community. Organic has gotten expensive, but this would allow us to get food provided to us locally. Speaking of locally, I have a bunch of other stuff in the show as well today. City Council, we're going to be talking about some of the rezonings that's taking place. We got also things in terms of cash in lieu, which with the Parks and Rec Department are looking to figure out new ways to pay for new parks within new neighborhoods. A lot of connectivity, Missoula growth policy. So we're getting a lot about that talking moving forward. I also have Pre-Critic later in the show right after a Zach session for you, and the Zootown Arts Community Center have been putting on socially distant shows every Saturday from basically August until the end of April. We're going to take the month of May off, but here is a Zach session made in part with KBGA College Radio, and here is one of the open mic performances by Red Clover.
Soft as a moth's wing, false eyes prophesy, sighing. I can see my future when I look into your tail lights, blind and in a stupor. I forgot to say good night. I woke up in a dream, surrounded by lupin and clover. The house is burning. Won't you come over, and I can take my gloves off, dip my fingers in the holy water. I can take my coat off, stay and be the perfect daughter. The bright gray sky eats through the ice, leaves a love-shaped hole, sacrifice my ties, and I can't keep a secret. Eats away my teeth and my slumber. If I can't take my clothes off, be the perfect lover.
Hey guys, welcome back. Now it's time for Pre-Critic. It's where I prejudge a movie whether it needs it or not, and we're kicking things off with In the Earth. This movie is coined as the very first horror movie of 2021, which is completely wrong because a couple weeks ago I mentioned another horror movie that came out that week, but hey, like everyone's trying to jump on the gravy train of being like the first movie of 2021 to be in theaters. But let's refer back as we join a group of people trying to find a cure for a deadly worldwide pandemic. Really? Pandemic talk? Let me guess, they go on an adventure, some of them die from the virus while others look to stop people from getting the cure because they think survival of the fittest is very important. Something about environment. Okay, listen, since the 90s, everything has been about the environment. So anyways, there's a forest, and it's a horror film. Do the math. Things cannot be seen until the end, only to disappoint you make you go, what was I going to have for dinner tonight? Moving on. Up next, we got Monday. Because there always have been those romantic dramas that tend to go towards a sad ending with one of them dying. But this time, they're going back into the old tropes of the late 2000s and early 10s in this romantic weekend full of fling sexy good time. But with Monday getting closer, hence the movie is why it's called Monday, this fling may only be just that. Something tells me one of them has a partner who is out of town or whatever, and they connect with a person only to reinforce their comfortable life that they threatened with their cheating. Or better yet, one of them is like, I don't believe in love, and the other one responds, don't believe in love, believe in me, baby. And I'm assuming they meet in a place where they met in the beginning, at the end, full circle. Next up, we got a brand new video game. It's called Oddworld. Soul something. Me doing my research. Hey, this is Pre-Critic. You don't have to do research for Pre-Critic. Remember those games where you need a brain to get to the next brain teaser? Welcome to Oddworld, where everything isn't what you think it is, but the challenges are pretty on the nose. Last time I played the series was on PS2 and Hastings was still around and letting people play demos or whatever. I'm thinking of Sam Goody. You might think that this is what the PS5 has to offer, and you might be right. Or you can just go back to Spider-Man Miles Morales and replay Spider-Man. Alright, so that about does it for my Pre-Critic for you guys. It's a nice little break in between heavy stuff that's happening in and around Missoula. Up next, we got your city council, but right now we got a new episode of Dubbin Stuff from Nightmare Castle. The first horror film of 2021.
I just have a lot on my mind. There's so much going on.
What I tell you, you gotta stop scrolling through Twitter before you go to bed.
How else am I gonna get educated liberal mindsets so I can dunk on my conservative friends?
Perhaps you can use a little bit of empathy for your conservative friends.
No, I just don't like what they're saying, and it's my turn to speak, and I got the power. For as long as I can remember, I was always an outcast. Blonde, white skin, I just didn't know where I could belong. Look at these hands. I just really want my phone right now.
Well, I just don't want you to get riled up again.
There was some way to distract him, that's it.
I just want you to know I could hear everything.
Oh, can I have my phone? I just need to check the weather tomorrow. I was thinking about going on a picnic. I would leave my phone at home, but I would need my phone right now so I could, go on a picnic. And then I could just leave my phone here, but I don't know what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, so maybe if you could tell me where my phone is?
Listen here. You're gonna look at your phone?
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna see something crazy?
No.
And you're gonna keep looking.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, let me tell you here, sister. You're gonna look at something, you're gonna be like, whoa, and then you get suggested something else, and you're gonna look at that too, and you're gonna get riled up again, and then you won't be able to get any sleep because of that, because you're just so into what's happening in Twitter, and nobody will
I
care.
care. I care a lot about what's going on in the world. Don't you think that you should stop thinking so narrow-mindedly?
I just subscribe to all sorts of news mediums, and then I weigh my options. I don't just take other people's words for it and just make their opinions my own.
You can't just not listen to people. They have a voice, and everyone deserves to be heard.
I don't know about that. You think that maybe you can pluck an apple from a tree, but not have to plant a tree? You're not the source of the information. You just eat the apple and gain the knowledge that it provides, and then you just kind of move on with the next thing and eat more and consume more instead of producing some stuff. You're just another mindless consumer of news and media, and then you regurgitate it, and hopefully people hear that you're right. And maybe nay. Maybe you are right.
Well, I like being right after all. But how do I be right and make sure that I'm right?
Well, before I get trapped into giving your phone back, I must remind you that you do have to get some sleep, my darling. Here's some water.
I read somewhere that tap water gives your kids autism.
This place wouldn't have to be Twitter.
No.
I'm gonna go over here and read a book.
Maybe.
I don't want to have to keep an eye on you all night to make sure that you're not gonna be on your phone or whatever.
What book are you reading? Hello? Answer me. Just tell me the book that you're reading. I don't care. What's that music coming from? Oh, I guess it's over.
Well, we are back once again with your City Council report. We're kicking things off with a public comment. There were a couple things brought up by the city, and I thought that would be interesting to hear. Mr. Rutledge speaks out on trees that were cut off Broadway across from the POV, and, of course, the question that's on everybody's minds, what is Missoula doing in terms of lifting the mask mandate in Missoula? So this is what he had to say.
Gosh, it's so unsightly, those trees being cut down on the Clark Fork River when I go for runs and bike rides, and when I'll probably be floating and recreating this summer. And I definitely understand some of that had to do with the Army Corps of Engineers, but I would be in support of Marler's plan of possibly adding some more vegetation to that, to Marilyn Marler. One other thing I wanted to hit on, I would like to maybe just float out there that we, especially when, we are having meetings with a lot of comments, potentially moving to back to a hybrid model as more folks are starting to get vaccinated regarding the pandemic, and maybe that you guys consider that, maybe moving that direction or to be open to that in the near future.
So far, the city county is going with the health recommendations from the health department, which have been saying more openings are happening and masks are still required. So far, the school board is meeting in person with public comments via Zoom. Some trustees are on Zoom as well for those who don't feel safe. And that's one of the things that the city might be looking towards, doing a hybrid meeting where they have opportunities to have people show up in person, while at the same time they have availability for people to be on Zoom, so they can do a cross kind of a hybrid meeting for people who feel safe going into meetings and speaking their truth, versus people who want to stay home and speak from home as well while wearing pajamas. All right, I don't know. Okay. My pre-critic's bleeding too much into my city council. But moving on, the mayor, John Engen, gives a proclamation for those who deserve props for being dispatchers for the 911 calls.
Whereas, ladies and gentlemen, the safety and well-being of its citizens continues to be one of the foremost concerns of the city of Missoula. Ensuring that safety and well-being requires the ability to receive calls for help and immediately send responders to provide that help. And whereas 911 is the first critical link in the chain in delivering public safety services, and whereas the safety of those responding to emergencies is also of great concern to the city of Missoula, and whereas the telecommunicators who work in 911 display a superior level of commitment, dedication, and professionalism in accomplishing their mission of receiving calls for help from citizens, dispatching emergency response agencies, and maintaining a communication link with the responders for safety purposes. And whereas those same telecommunicators often work extraordinarily long hours and difficult schedules to provide this service to the public and to ensure the safety of responders, but often go unrecognized. And whereas amid the current public health emergency and global pandemic of COVID-19, these telecommunicators continue to report for duty every day to ensure the continuity of this critical mission. Now, therefore, I, John Hagan, Mayor of the City of Missoula and the State of Montana, do hereby recognize the week of April 11th through 17th, 2021 as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. And I thank the telecommunicators in 911 for all of their efforts and hours and hard work under difficult circumstances. The community truly would not be safe without them. I also encourage the community to recognize the importance of the function of 911 and to thank these dedicated individuals in writing. That is our proclamation, and I do thank those fine folks at 911 who go unsung but are at the front lines of taking care of our residents every day.
So dial 911 and thank your dispatcher. Actually, don't. It's for emergencies only. But if you happen to have an emergency, then thank them too. All right. Up next, we got Grant Carlton. He gave a presentation on the City of Missoula as they look into a parks and open space requirements, cash in lieu, which would make open space parks more available to neighborhoods and community development. Here is Grant Carlton. He explains cash in lieu.
The impetus for the current open space and park requirements, sort of as we know them, that are currently housed in the subdivision regulations, was the 2004 Master Parks and Recreation Plan development. When we were going through that process, it was made abundantly clear that Missoulians desire quality, high-level open space opportunities, and they desire those opportunities close to home. These notions were further highlighted by the recent Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails survey. And I also wanted to mention this is sort of this notion of keeping pace with growth and providing high-quality open space opportunities close to where people live is critical as we navigate the ongoing Mullen area, the planning process in the Mullen area with Missoula County.
The major takeaway you should look at from this is the ability to dedicate parkland as an open space. Open space versus regular parks, there's not much of a difference except for the fact that open space is more of a natural park where they might do some trails and trailheads and signs and stuff like that. They don't need a lawnmower. They kind of keep the space fairly lower maintenance, and it's just the ability to keep open space for people. Let's see. Without getting too preachy, let's look into the language a little bit more. I really probably should read the script rather than just... All right, so he talks a little look at the language a little bit more. Here's Grant Carlton once again.
So first and foremost, we want to support community adopted goals with respect to providing high quality parkland and open space amenities, like I mentioned in the last slide. And a couple of enumerated objectives pulled straight from the 2004 Master Parks Plan. Provide an open space opportunity within a 10 to 12 minute walk of every resident. And I have opportunity in quotation marks there because, we're not just talking about parks. We're talking about natural areas, trail connections, playgrounds, commuter trails, just a wide variety of different, open space amenities.
So part of this is a rezoning, and with more development taking place, this would act as a passageway for new neighborhoods to connect with trails and whatnot. Connectivity is a big part of our Missoula growth policy. Which is a big, huge master plan for the city of Missoula that got passed a couple years back and have been adjusted to match the growth inward policy that Missoula wants to do. On one side of growth inward, but while at the same time having the Parks and Rec, we're looking to improve and open more trails. This was made possible, just a little throwback to the Fort Missoula Regional Park, which provided $1 million towards replacement of playgrounds and gyms and stuff like that. There's $3 million that they used for connectivity, trails, other projects within Parks and Rec. And this was part of the Fort Missoula Regional Park grant, which is $42 million. And like I said, the $1 million goes to replacement of the playgrounds. $3 million are for additional parks and maintenance and whatnot. And then the $30 million was going towards that Fort Missoula Regional Park, the big park that got put in next to the historic museum at Fort Missoula area. So, but the cash in lieu proposal of this rezoning would impact the zone and open space plan for the place in the area. They cannot do this funding without proper plans for the area's parks and open spaces. That's kind of like what they're trying to do, is that they want to make sure that when the neighborhoods are being developed, they can tap the developer for creation of certain parks, So then that way it can create an easier, seamless creation of these parks moving forward. But that's basically what I got from this presentation. You can feel free to watch the section yourself. They go into a lot more detail about cash and loan, what this actually means. I'm just giving the brief overview. Let's move on. And last week they spoke on rezoning, increasing of Burton, Shakespeare, and Defoe Street. So this is kind of near Scott Street, the overpass next to the train tracks. This is the whole idea. They want to kind of like remove a lot of the current housing. The landowner is in talks of selling his land, and so the developer wants to basically build one of those 32 plus unit complexes in this particular area to have apartments. And now the city's looking to rezone this area, and it's really closer to the downtown area. But Andy Housel, during public comment, spoke against this rezoning because of the potential exodus of people already living there.
Which is that I support increased density. I have never come to council and done the not in my neighborhood stuff. I know folks from other neighborhoods do that all the time. It's important that we have increased density in order to address our need for housing in this community, and not just housing stock, but affordable housing stock. But there are 3 families there who have had notice from the property owner and have yet still been unable to find new housing. So those people exist. Those are people who will potentially end up displaced and receiving services from the Poverello or other, frankly, quite limited services in our community. I think we're lucky that it's April, but this is not okay. This is not what we're looking for. So every time that a new development comes in, we need to have policies and procedures in place that ensure that the people who are removed out of affordable housing in order to put new housing there have somewhere to go.
And this does kind of go back to 4th Street development. This was a huge issue that was happening in Missoula. A lot of residents of that area and people who are in Missoula commented against the 4th Street development because there are a lot of old houses. And while this is like a mobile home kind of facility, in this rezoning of this new place, it doesn't forget the fact that you're basically displacing a lot of people moving on this as well. A problem that doesn't necessarily get solved, but doesn't make things worse. So a lot of times aims to look to the future, but at what cost? So this is Paul Forstein, Land Use and Planning for IMEG, the developer of this, who wants to develop.
It's a very difficult situation with folks living on the site, and everybody was given notice last summer of this process. We had a neighborhood meeting over the summer in July. And all, the tenants were all to be vacated by February. The landowner actually, because the schedule of the project wasn't going to mandate that they'd leave by February, extended the leases for a couple of the home residents there. And so they're not going to be kicked out next week per se. They still have a couple months on their lease, and they're not looking to move them out quickly necessarily. It's just been, it is difficult when, mobile homes, these are mainly mobile homes, and mobile homes aren't permitted in the city. You're not seeing new mobile home parks go into the city. I don't know that they're allowed. And they're certainly very difficult at the county level to get approved. They're very difficult. And so we have a lot of them in the city of Missoula, and we're seeing a lot of them being removed for different various infill housing. And I don't know what the right answer is. You can't just fix up a mobile home that's been there for 30 years and keep using it as a renting, or we shouldn't do that. There's going to be continued pressure on these to be converted into stick-built houses. You don't see mobile homes in a lot of mature cities in the United States, and they probably were there at one time. They just get moved out, and it's a difficult situation, and it's that nobody really enjoys. So that's what I would add.
Yes, he did add a lot to this conversation, and yeah, like many mobile homes, once the property owner decides to sell, and the residents, I mean, I'm a lot of times they're kind of like up a creek without a paddle. I mean, there's something many cities on the grow have done. Usually mobile homes are usually kind of on the outskirts of the city and kind of like in different parts of the area, the poor parts of town. They're cheap. You basically, they're mobile. You move the mobile homes, the trailers in the trailer parks, and you have cheap rent, but then you have the landowner who's like, I'm gonna sell, and then everyone there is kind of like, oh, what do we do? Is like they own the trailer sometimes, and sometimes they don't. And it just, without housing that matches these mobile home rates, progress becomes a pill that's hard for a lot of the people living in the area to swallow. City Council member Jordan Hess reflects on this.
We live in a property rights state. We have a legislature that is on a tear right now, going hog wild to actively gut local controls, to actively limit cities and towns' abilities to mandate affordability, to actively remove the protections of zoning. And this is bad. This is preemption in a bad way. And it's preempting an already bleak housing situation that the city is doing its damnedest to address through a housing policy. So I appreciate the folks who have called in to tell us that the house is on fire from an affordability standpoint. I really do. And it's not lost on me that we have some real problems in our housing market and in our housing situation. And I count my blessings every night that I go to bed in my warm, comfortable bed that is a couple blocks from this rezone. So I guess that's sort of my rant. I am looking forward to the day when our Affordable Housing Trust Fund is fully implemented, when it is funded at a greater level. I want to highlight that it is funded many-fold greater than it was initially planned to be funded in the first year. I think that there's some really good work afoot in the city of Missoula from an affordable housing standpoint. But the city of Missoula is engaged in a Sisyphean effort to we're pushing a rock uphill here, folks, and I appreciate everyone recognizing that.
And so far, like you've probably already heard, that the tenants hadn't had advance notice about the potential for new development in the area. The city voted in favor of rezoning this area, and so far many tenants will have to move out of this area up Burton Defoe and Shakespeare Streets. I have a lot more on the show today because last week we had an update to an ordinance that was once complaint-driven when it came to amplified sound out of your parks. And so we're talking a little bit more about this during this meeting. And this is Amber Sherrill, who's kicking us off.
Okay, thanks. So this ordinance has been in effect for about 30 years, give or take some there. It continues to be a complaint-based system as it has been in the past. It has not created problems in the past, and it has solved conflicts as they have arisen. I think this is an important ordinance for our neighborhoods and for basically our shared space in this community. I think this solves problems rather than creates them, and I am happy to make that motion and support it.
Part of the opposition to this would create a demand for musicians to pay to play in certain areas that could be do freely before. Unless that one neighbor calls the cops because they just got back from a late night delivering Amazon bottles filled with, never mind, you get the idea. Mr. Rutledge, public comment from last week, also spoke on this as well.
Music. I have never encountered myself playing music in a neighborhood park. If I'm playing volleyball, maybe at Kiwanis, anybody saying to turn that off. Maybe that's because I have such excellent taste in music. I don't know. How is this going to affect maybe events like Kickball Missoula down at McCormick Park? Are they going to have to spend $48 every single time that somebody has a speaker system going on? I don't think that would be a great idea. This could also, FUP's Summer Softball Carnival. So those are some concerns there. Definitely the cost. I think that the language should be amended to exclude portable Bluetooth speakers, and that if needed to, and it was becoming a nuisance, if there was a complaint, a responding officer would already have the ammo to be able to make the right call. I respect the work that the police do and their judgment in these situations, and I think that you giving them the ability to do that is an excellent idea.
In terms of ordinance, this is an update. $48 to be able to get a permit to get amplified sound, PAs, rallies, and stuff like that. And a lot of times this is something that if you break, this is to kind of close the loophole. And so in a way, the city would fine you for any kind of gatherings that you did. But in terms of ordinances, they're not the kind of things that can throw you in jail. So you can do this, but you will be fined if you do it. So I don't want to get too much into that. Let's think back. See, there's definitely a lot of arguments, and this definitely would, for a lot of performers and people who just want to bring a guitar and just hang out and play. There's a lot of confusion, and a lot of people were very concerned. This next person, I only got the name S. Taylor out of this, and this is what they had to say.
Or I'm speaking for myself that I don't think that this is something that can be so black and white. I think that it could be reworded, and there could be a medium to find a solution in between that would make sure everybody is happy. None of us want to go to parks and annoy neighbors. That's not our intention. But the way this is set now, it makes it completely black and white, and it also makes it up to the interpretation of whoever decides they don't like what they're hearing, rather than specifics. And I'm concerned that this could snowball, and I know that's been said before, but it could snowball. And there's been multiple council members have said that this hasn't been a big issue before, so I don't get why it's a big issue now. Again, the vagueness of the motion is cause for concern. If it was reworded, I think that it could work out very well for everyone involved.
So imagine you put a rally together in your neighborhood, and one of these things, and one thing that gets it canceled is the level of sound coming from the amps, speakers and whatnot. But with the amp permit, I'm calling it an amp permit, would allow for calls to be routed to event organizers rather than having police show up to cancel the event because of the complaints. So there's a lot of good things in terms of having a permit to a certain degree, because you can have an event. And even thinking back to what they did with the Paddleheads, the former Osprey field, is that they shut off fireworks. It's really loud. It's close to neighborhoods and stuff like that. But they were able to get the permitting to be able to do so, because you can get permits to do that if you apply for it. And also it was a city asset in a way, so they were able to get it pretty streamlined for that fact as well. That's just an example off the top of my head. But yeah, it is a way to protect large gatherings and rallies that require amplified sound, additional costs. You know, there is a general cost for any kind of gatherings for an organizations in a park regardless, but this is just something that they're adding to it as well. But I think if the city were to separate and add more inclusion to people going to parks to hang, listen, play for music for friends, but a full-blown show should have permits. So they should have things written in there, like people just gather, hang out, maybe have a Bluetooth speaker, and they shouldn't have any kind of permits required for that. So they need to. So they sent this back to committee, and they're going to be talking about it some more as well. But maybe let's see. Yeah. So yeah, they threw it back to committee, and they're going to talk about it some more. So this concludes the city council meeting, and let's go over a little bit of what's happening with some of the smaller meetings within the city of Missoula. So let's talk about the Parks and Conservation, where they talked everything parks, and what they want to do is create an updated trail and river access to the south side of Clark Fork River on the 4th Street axis. So this was also a big deal when it came to having new development with new housing and stuff like that. But now they're talking about changing the power lines, putting them underground, and even making a potential widening of the trail, of the Kim Williams Trail. And so here's a picture. This picture is a rendering, is the idea that they want to build with the improvements to the Kim Williams Trail. For 6 weeks, the trail will be closed and to Northwestern Energy to move their power lines to an underground easement, so they're going to divert a lot of the traffic. But they're not going to do all of them, but some of them off 4th Street. So far, they plan to make the trail 4 feet wider and reduce congestion. And yeah, and so far they are floating this idea to developers while they're doing this underground easement as well. All right, in the land use and planning, this meeting, they spoke about this building. So let's bring up the picture, which, you know, is looking to get a historic inventory for future owners to reuse. They want to protect this building because it has a historic significance, and they applied for the Federal Historic Landmark because of the history tied to the city. This building, in particular, was built in 1900, and it was used for Bessinger hides, wools, and furs. Trapping is a big part of Montana's history, It has housed Missoula Brick Warehouse Vernacular. It was also so close to the railroad tracks, and many buildings close to the tracks often have a lot of history tied to it. This item was informational only, and let's get into a little bit of that cash in lieu that we were talking about before. This was using parkland to create national parks, trails, and connectivity, along with a clarifying language associated with neighborhood development. During the committee meeting, they talked a little bit more about the cash in lieu. And the main focus of this is that with neighborhoods, they want to be able to create a 10-minute walk for people to get to parks. And that's part of why they want to create more park space for a lot of neighborhoods and developments as they move forward. City of Missoula is having input in development of parks as they get built in neighborhoods is a big part of why the city wants to have this cash in lieu process, is they want to leverage the ability to have oversight with their park development. During public safety and health, this is a big kind of deal that's happening in the state of Montana, but the city was kind of reacting to House Bill 127, which requires local city to hold up elections for municipal judges. And so far, a lot of the city council and community folks would appoint judges to positions. And so far, because of this new law that got passed and signed into law by Gene Forte, they are moving to have elections. So the city is going to be going to the county. So for every election that they hold, they will throw this up there, part of their ballots. So expect to see a lot more people on your next ballot moving forward. Let's see, that's it. And if you want to learn more information, like I said, you can go to ci.missoula.mt.us. This is a lot of information, and I got through it, a lot of it. I would say I'm about 65% clarity when it comes to this particular city council, but there was definitely a lot of information as we moved through the city council. All right, so that about does it for my show. I wanted to thank you guys for joining me. This weekend we're doing a show for the ZAC, and the ZAC is hosting another music performance on Saturday. All right, so the next show that's coming up there is New Old Future, and the last one is going to be the punk rock karaoke. So that's kind of what's happening this weekend as well. So the whole idea is the New Old Future. And part of this is going to be, it's going to be a garage rock and pop and rock quartet. They mix surf sounds, country twang, poppy yet cerebral lyrics, and so on and so forth. So this band's going to be playing this Saturday as well, and we'll be live streaming that on MCAT. That about does it. I have a lot to do today, so I am going to sign off. Hopefully this show was nice and long enough for you guys. But for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramf. I hope you guys have a wonderful week.